It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, July 11th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is getting a way too early start on the 2025 NHL draft.
Oh boy.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dig into the 2025 NHL draft, which there is rhyme and reason to talking about it this early, Russ, and we'll get into that. On yesterday's show, we got a closer look at Jett Luchanko from our pal Ian over at Locked On Boston Bruins, who also covers the Guelph Storm. A really great conversation. If you haven't listened, you should go back and listen to it. But he added a bit of context when we posted the episode that Braden Bowman signed an AHL contract. He was on Guelph. And now they need a new captain. So maybe Jett Luchanko could be stepping into those shoes. We'll see. But it's something to keep an eye on via Ian. We also learned again that Jacob Gaucher is likely to be returning to the Phantoms on an AHL deal this upcoming season. And not a huge scorer, but was like a real quality center that did well on faceoffs. But I think he's a good guy to bring back to the Phantoms, like a real solid AHL player.
Yeah, he was fine. I thought he was good. I don't look at him as much for future or anything, but for organizational depth, fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Russian Hockey Federation has split officially from the IIHF after being suspended all these years. They're just like, all right, we're not even going to beg anymore. We're done, right?
Yeah, they're still going to send their players to the Worlds and the Olympics. They're not going to hold that back if they're allowed to in some way, shape, or form. No World Juniors though, so that really changes that forever now. Like that's a shame. And so, yeah, it is what it is. I'm not pro Russia. I don't want anybody to think I'm pro Russia. What I am pro is a lot of these kids get swept up in this stuff. It's not their fault, and if they could play against other countries around the world and great competition like they used to, it's better for them. But now they're not going to get that chance.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is an interesting turn of events there. Now,
one more thing, and Cap Friendly
yes.
is officially dead now.
Yeah. RIP. It was a good run. I got some screen caps while I could, but it is a sad day for all of us. Looking ahead to the 2025 draft, I did want to talk about it this early, mostly because of what the Flyers did at the 2024 draft and in free agency with accumulating all those picks. As we've said, they have currently 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, and a third-round pick. So that's 7 picks in 3 rounds. It's a huge group of assets. And so I think, given the fact that it seems like the Flyers have put a lot of investment into having assets in this upcoming draft, I think it's important we take a closer look at it and on a very regular basis, as we do all year round on this show. We are very prospect focused and making sure that all y'all out there are prepared for the upcoming draft when it comes around. So I think now that we're like just a hair under a year out from this draft class, which Danny Briere has invested a lot in, like, Russ, how do you start evaluating a draft class now that the dust has settled from the previous year?
Right. So, and the only reason I'm doing this and let you twist my arm is because we're talking about it and how I do it. I don't mind doing that. I don't want to act like I'm an expert on the 2025 draft class because I'm not. I'm going to learn along the year as I see them and start. Now, again, some of these players I've seen. James Hagens, I've seen for the last few years. They've been bringing him into USA camps. He's been in USA tournaments. So I've seen him up close internationally in practice. I've interviewed he and his brother. So I have a lot of information on James Hagens. So that's, that's fine. Some of the other guys that we'll talk about, I've seen at the Five Nations, they generally bring in guys a year or two early. All of us have seen Gavin McKenna. That doesn't mean I'm going to talk about the 2026 draft yet. I'm not. But the point is that the reason I do it this way, I'm still one person. I'm not a whole scouting department. Like at EP, we'll start to talk about it maybe in like November after the start of the season, after the fall classic, things like that, and start coming out with a watch list and all that. I think that's around the timing. And that's fine. That's when an agency should, a place should do that. For me, it's like I gathered what I did from last year, didn't go too deep into these players, saw what I saw for their seasons, but also have to put that away because that's a bias now that I could have for the next year. Like I had Cole Eiserman 2 years ago. I had him in the top 5. I probably had him in the top 3. And then he ended up where he ended up for me, like 12 or something, right? But if I'd have kept that bias going, then I wouldn't have changed my mind. And I have to give myself the opportunity to see what's changed because a lot of times with young players, when they go on to these teams, these super teams, sometimes they don't have as much responsibility and they could be a little more freewheeling. The offense could really be on display. And then you're like, oh my God, look at this guy. In 2 years, he's really going to be something. But then as the responsibility piles up and everything else starts to come to the forefront, then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Now we're seeing that person in a different light. So that's what happens.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, to look at progression or regression, as the case may be. I think looking at a 2 to 3 year pattern with these kids is what you want to see. And that last year is super important, right? Because these kids in their draft year, like draft year -1, there's a lot of development going on and a lot of fine-tuning details and figuring out their role. And their role isn't as big as the current draft year guys, to your point. And so it's really, really important to like have that as a starting off point to compare them to themselves and not
Right.
really looking at comparing them to each other as much right now.
Right. And so, yeah, as we start looking at the tournaments, honestly, and I don't think I'm getting there this year. For the World Junior Summer Showcase, a lot of times it was up in Lake Placid. That's really far. This year it's a little closer, but I'm not keen on that tournament because guys are still not playing 100% in that tournament. There's no other way to say it. It's not shinny. It's not. But it's also they're not pedal to the metal. Like this is what I could always expect to see because they're not hitting with the same force. A lot of that you'll see when you watch it like on NHL Network. So there's something to look at with that just to see how guys are, but you're not really seeing their full game or their game under real duress or things like that. Now, Holinka is the real start of it. And if it wasn't in Edmonton, maybe I'd go, but Edmonton's just a little too far for me. But I'll watch it and I'll study it after. And that's really important. And that really kicks off the season.
Yeah, I think, your point about these summer tournaments being not 100%, and because the guys aren't 100% and they're still in their summer training mode, and
Yeah.
nobody wants to get hurt going into this
No.
season, especially if you're in your draft year, right?
Right. No, 100%. I mean, that's something you have to guard against. But the Holinka will have better competition than the Summer Showcase will. That's definite. And yeah, it's just this is the way to just the season starts and we start looking at it. And right now I've got a list of, I don't know, 12 guys for the 2025. I probably could have put more, but I didn't want to get crazy. So right now that's my list. I'm not putting out a first round list for a very long time. I know other outlets want to. That's fine. I know I could do it for hits. I choose not to.
So I think, at least for me, when I'm looking at some of these names, we're going to get into a few of them over the rest of the show. When I'm looking at some of these key guys, like your 10, 12 names on your list right now. So I go and I watch one of those games and then I see somebody else. And that's how I add names to that list. Like, oh, that kid looks good. I want
Yeah.
to follow that.
Yeah.
Is that like similar to how
Yeah,
you
that's
operate?
similar. And sometimes I get a longer look. Like there's LJ Mooney. He's the cousin of um LJ Mooney. No. LJ Cooley, the cousin of Logan Cooley. And he's a terrific player, or at least was the last couple of times I saw him. But, now it's going to be a year later, and I'm going to have to see, how he looks. But yeah, that's essentially how I do it. There are some that I just know ahead of time. But like I said, I never want to go too deep because then it's like I'm almost painting a picture in my head of this player ahead of time.
Yeah, so I think that is important. So we are going to talk again in a very early terms about some guys. We're going to start with James Hagens and Michael Misa. We're going to do that coming up next.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
All right, so we are going to start off with James Hagens because I think, for me, it's the name I've heard the most related to next year's draft. And that's mostly because he really popped at U18s this past year. He was the tournament MVP. He got the silver medal on Team USA, was on the tournament all-star team, named best forward, 9 goals, 13 assists in 22 games. um, just absolutely dominant performance in that tournament. And it's interesting because he's 5'10, 170. And so he's a bit of a smaller center. But
Mhm.
like, why do you think he was able to be so successful this past year in draft -1?
I think his brother has a lot to do with it. Like I said, I've interviewed him. He's a defenseman. So when Michael works out with him, he's getting to work out against a really good defenseman. Michael played for the Steel. I don't believe he got drafted. Doesn't mean he won't make it to the NHL someday, but and he's a little bigger. He's 5'11", so there's good competition there. They're both very competitive guys. They're both Long Island guys, so I kind of vibed with them. Like their mom cooks some Italian food, she freezes it, or she puts it in the fridge. They just eat like pigs when they want to. Like this is the way you grow up on the island. Like I was in that same kind of neighborhood. So they're probably playing all the time, and I know they play against elite players. Like there's plenty of Long Island guys, uh, New York guys to work out with, and so they get to do that too. And when they do that in the summer, you get better. You inevitably get better, and he's just got a motor that never stops. You don't worry about his size because his speed is like it doesn't matter. It doesn't. The guys can't catch up
Right.
to him so far. He always wants the puck, which is something where even at a young age, that's kind of gutsy. Uh, on the power play, he's great. He's great on faceoffs. He'll get to the net. Like he'll get to the net with tricky moves with stick and puck control. So all these things are in there already. They're already hardwired. So yeah, he looks like the presumptive number one, but I'm not going to say that yet. But yeah, do the stats and everything tell a story? They do.
Right. So he had 102 points with the national team development program this year.
Yeah,
39 goals, 63 assists in 58 games. So that's like just shy of 2 points per game here,
yeah,
which is remarkable. Again, because he wasn't like amongst the top guys on that team getting drafted this year. He was draft
right,
-1.
right.
So to pull off that kind of achievement is pretty remarkable. But I guess like the question is, where does he go from here on that squad?
Well, it'll be similar to Austin Matthews. Matthews would have done this too, The first time I saw Matthews was on Long Island at a tournament when the USHL was there, and I didn't even know the year before he had a broken leg. And so, like, had he not had that broken leg, Matthews would have been popping earlier, right? So, Hagens has been healthy. He's popping just like that. He's of that same talent base, even though he may be a smaller guy. Nobody's going to worry about what size he is. All of a sudden the size won't matter for him. And yeah, it's just his competitiveness is really what gets him there. The He's got a hard wrist shot, so he's already very strong. He may be that whatever 172. Probably by the time the end of the summer rolls around, he's going to be like maybe 180. And if you remember, if I can remember back when I was 180. God, that was a while ago. And if you're working out all the time and you're really put together, you could be pretty strong at 180. And so I remember how I was, and he's got to be way stronger than that. And so sometimes those guys with that center of gravity, with that kind of strength, can really do some different things that sometimes big guys can't even do.
It's just remarkable watching him play, honestly. And
It is.
so, given where the Flyers are, it's not likely they'll have that number 1 overall pick.
No.
But with the assets they have,
Yeah, they'll make
anything
a
is
try.
possible.
Like any other
Yeah.
team, they'll try. You know, again, we have to you could listen to the team for what you want as far as like how deep a draft is or anything. And I think this top 10 will probably be better overall than last year's top 10, but I don't know anything else. I'm not going to make any other statements. But what I'm basically saying is you have to look at this on two sides. The Flyers acquired a lot of 2025 guys, so draft picks, so they like that draft. A lot of teams were
Mhm.
willing to give up the 2025 picks. Why were they willing to give them up? So you have to also consider that side. You can't just be one-sided about it, like, hey, this is going to be the best draft since 2003, because you don't know yet.
Right. So, I want to switch gears and talk about Michael Misa as well. And we saw, or at least I did, I saw a lot of Michael Misa in the CHL playoffs. So
Yeah, in the
first we saw
Memorial
him in
Cup.
first we saw him in the OHL playoffs because they did
Yep.
play London. So I got to see him play in that. And that
Yep.
was part of the reason why, honestly, I picked Saginaw to win the Memorial Cup, which they did, because he was part of that overall team effort
Mm-hmm.
that I
Mm-hmm.
thought looked really good for Saginaw. And so he wound up with 11 points in 17 playoff games. He had 5 assists in the Memorial Cup. And I just felt like he just looked really, really strong out there in terms of skills, in terms of his skating, and 6 feet tall already. I just see a lot of promise in this kid.
There's a lot of promise, but here's what happens though. He was talked about being the number 1 pick for a couple of years ago. And so expectations, now there's
Yes.
expectations on him. He gets into the Mem Cup. You think he looked good because you're watching him for the first time this year and you like what you see. People are watching him for the second time and they're like, don't like what I see. He's not even a point a game. Like, that's all of a sudden that works against him. He did look good. He looked fast. His edge work is good. He definitely play makes. Like, he's not doing anything differently, but he didn't do enough now. So now all of a sudden there's this thought, well, next year he's going to have to, at 75 points, he's going to have to get 100 points. If he doesn't get 100
Right.
points and he's, then he's going to drop a little bit in the draft.
And that's why, that's a really good point that's related to what I said in the previous
Yeah.
segment. You got to compare them to themselves and
Yes.
less to others in this circumstance this early, because you're right. He didn't take a huge leap forward this past year, but he still produced at a very high level. But
No.
if comparing him to himself, no. I mean, because, when he was super young, he broke Connor McDavid's OHL Cup scoring record. He had the most points per game for a U16 player in OHL history a couple of
Mhm.
years ago. But he at a certain point, it's going to level off as other guys catch up. But now he really has to take that step forward this upcoming year. I think it's okay for him to have like a level off year in draft -1, but draft year, he's got to step it up, right?
He does. I mean, if he doesn't, he'll be in the top 10, but he'll fall out of that. Well, can he be the number one overall? And it's a shame because, like, look what happened to his brother. His brother got drafted in the 5th round. I mean, Luke Misa is a pretty good player. Everybody played chicken with that pick, and finally he was picked in the 5th round. I think Luke could play. I know Michael's better, but we don't know how much better yet, and that's what this year will tell.
That is going to be an interesting thing, and I think that's what a big difference is between Michael Misa and James Hagens, right?
Yes. Yeah, because they're both 17. They both haven't turned 18 yet.
Well, they're all young. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a lot of expectations, and both these guys have that. We're going to talk about two guys who also have high expectations on them: Luka Radivojevic and Anton Frondell, coming up next. It's summer, which always makes me think of baseball, and especially with the Phillies being a ton of fun this season, I want to be there in person as much as possible. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting those tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With those killer last-minute deals, views from your seat, and their low price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying those MLB tickets in your town, those summer concerts, and so much more. My favorite part of the app is that it's great for getting notified about their flash deals. Plus, Game Time lets you save even more with zone deals, where you pick a section and let Game Time choose the seat for you. Best of all, they have all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and your tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Russ. So Luka Radivojevic, right-handed defenseman who is Slovakian, but is playing in Sweden right now.
Yeah, interesting guy, son of Bronco, who played for the Flyers for a little while. Yeah, he was born in Minnesota. That's because his dad played hockey here, right? Really good player. Was just taken in the selected. I think it was in the OHL draft. I can't seem to find it right this second, but I know it looks like he's playing overseas still, and that's fine. He's an interesting guy. Like when you looked at him in the U18s, he's a point a game. So point a game player on a team like that, okay. Very good zone entries, really good passer. He put up the points. He is 5'10" now, but his dad was bigger. I want to say he was 6'2". So there's a hope that he could grow. He was 6'2". And if you didn't know when he played for the Flyers, 03, 04, and then 05, 06 after the lockout. So, and he wasn't a defenseman. He was a right winger. So, he's got hockey in his blood. And, this is a kid that really can skate and play the position. He's definitely got the offensive output that you want. He's got a bloodline that you want. So teams are going to pay attention. They're going to ignore the 5'10" on him a little bit and hope. And there also is going to be that hope that, hey, he can still grow a few inches. He's still only 17.
Yeah. I think, the thing to look for from my perspective is where does he play this upcoming season? Because as we know with, Swedish hockey clubs, they have different levels within the same organization. They go up and down. So there's the U18 squad, there's the U20 league, and then there's the SHL. Like, is he going to get any SHL time this year, or is he going to primarily be in the J20? That would be my guess.
Yeah, I think J20, maybe they give him a game or two as if he's playing that good, just to kind of, give him that little cup of coffee. But I think it's all J20.
The other thing is that, he not only played in U18s last year, he played in World Juniors as kind of an underage guy. And I think that's important, experience for him to get on Team Slovakia. and he had 6 assists in U18s
Yep.
last year. So that's something to build on, I think, as a playmaking defenseman. I think he'll have more opportunities this upcoming year.
Yeah, actually, so it was the Charlottetown Islanders that took him in the 2025 NHL Draft prospect. They do what they do is the import. So he was the number 10 pick in the CHL import draft. So the fact that he was picked by Charlottetown shows that he could make a change if he wanted to after his draft year. Like if all of a sudden he decides, yeah, let's come to North America and do it, he could, especially if he's a little bit years away, let's say, of being a real impact player in the SHL. Basically, he's got options, and that's a big thing for him. So I like the fact that he looks like he's going to be like somewhere around the top 10, top 15 at 5'10". I think that's a statement part. So we'll see how that holds up. We saw that Kiviar, who same height, probably the same offensive ability, fell dramatically when he just didn't produce at the end of the year when he came back healthy. So, the injury hurt him in his draft year, and it's a shame, but this draft year is going to help shape what he's done. He's gotten everybody to notice him now, but now he's got to keep forging
Right.
ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I think, he's, as you have said multiple times and will continue to say, rankings right now are useless.
Yeah.
But he is somebody that could be on the Flyers' radar simply for where he's likely to fall on the list in a wide enough range with those 3 picks that I think it is worth following him a little bit more closely.
Yeah.
From a
All I could say is imagine if he was in the queue, he'd probably have 100 points.
Probably. That's fair. All right. Anton Frondell, who is a center. And I think that his big knock is his skating, but he also had an injury this past year that made him miss a lot of games, including U18. So I think the key is just stay healthy this season, right?
Yeah, but he was still a point a game in like U17s and the World Junior A Challenge. He was 7 points in 6 games. So, I mean, this is a guy who could literally do it all. He's a very smart player. So whatever you think he's missing, he makes up for in that. I looked him up on Instat because he's got some tremendous stats already. 67% shots on goal, 57%
Love
faceoffs
that.
won, 50% puck battles won, 1.12 hits a game, 4.7 shots a game. Like there's very little he's not doing. So if just fixing his skating is all we're talking about, yeah, give me Anton Frondell every day of the week.
Yeah, I think, as much as like the Flyers picked a lot of centers in
Doesn't matter.
2024, doesn't matter. Like to your point, Frondell looks like a really great skilled player. And
This
I
guy could be
think,
a number 1 center.
yeah, so I think, following what he does, especially in the international tournaments this upcoming year and against the top competition, that's what I want to see out of him. And is how does he stack up? And can he build on what he did this past year and hopefully have a full season to show for it?
Yeah, I mean, right now, just to show you as far as outlets, the consolidated ranking for him on EP, he's number 3.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's high on him. So it's gonna take a lot for us not to be high on him. And he's got the shot. He's got literally everything else you want. I think the skating will come around. And he's a guy that it wouldn't shock me at the end of the year if he gets some SHL time. But he's going to have to go
Yeah.
through the ranks because of the injury. Like he'll play a few games in the 18s, he'll play mostly with the 20s, and then maybe see some SHL time at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. But yeah, I'm really excited to get going. I'll start a brand new spreadsheet as I always
A
do.
fresh one.
Absolutely love that. It's like getting a new notebook at the beginning of the school year.
Which
Excited to
kind did
fill
you
it.
get? Did you get the composition one, or did you get something fancier? I always got something fancier. I ended up getting the spiral type. I
Gotta
didn't
have the
like
spiral so you can flip it all the way
right.
around, right?
Spiral was always the way. Yeah, the black
With a
ones,
pocket.
right.
Gotta have a pocket
The black
too.
ones didn't suit me. They didn't suit me.
No. But I don't know. The kids all have laptops these days, so I don't know if like
They still
notebooks are
sell them
even
though.
still a
Like I
thing.
saw, they're still selling the
Yeah,
composition
it's
notebooks.
true.
Somebody's
That is
using them
true.
for something.
All right. Well, those are a throwback, and in addition, gotta love Scott Laughton being a throwback and going to JCPenney with Gritty and getting that photo
Good
shoot done.
stuff.
Link to that in the show notes. I can't like just beautiful. And honestly, if they even think about trading Scott Laughton, I know from a hockey perspective, there's reasons why it could make sense, but I will be the saddest person alive if Scott
I'm
Laughton.
sure there's going to be a lot of sad people. They may just let his contract run out too. It might happen.
I rue the day. All right, that'll do it for today's show. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions you want us to answer, let us know on Twitter at LockedOnFlyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.